So my motivation, Minister, in bringing this forward was last November, the repeated press reports about young people, and all they were doing wrong in the midst of COVID. Complaints about breaches of COVID restrictions and photos and videos circulating, all castigating young people and their behaviours. To be young is quite a challenge. You're ever thought of in terms of what you will give to society when you're older, and I have a real problem with that. You're considered intimidating if you gather in groups, but that's just because you haven't got anywhere else or designated place to go and meet. You're loud and you cause fear just by being young and exuberant. So this age group have handled challenges never before experienced, even outside of COVID. They cope in a cyber age. They have to figure out social interaction, appropriateness, consent, and what is real and what is not in an online environment where frequently reality is distorted and your engagement can be twisted and disseminated before even any right of reply. While these young people coming up are better educated than any generation before them, they still face unprecedented challenges. Those in their 20s have now lived through 2 dramatic economic shocks and all of the consequences that flow from that. The funding of mental health and recovery programmes are very timely and important, as the youth generation is the generation that have had the rug pulled out from under them, quite literally. Yet despite all of the judgment and the narrative that surround them, young people make huge contributions in the here and now. In their youth, they enrich our society, their views are significant, their perspectives are challenging and refreshing. The optimism of youth is a resource to be harnessed by leaders. The purity of their perspectives, not challenged or not tarnished by disappointment and life experience, should be a shining light, and it is important that their voices are heard, their perspectives are considered and their views impact. Childhood, youth and old age are finite periods in our lives when a lot of change can happen in a very short space of time. For the very young throughout COVID, the milestones of development have passed without being shared. Children have taken their first steps without the presence of grandparents. Holy communions and confirmations have been cancelled, or if preceded, they did so without the pomp and significance that every child deserves on such an occasion. Birthday parties didn't happen, and some children, like my own child, spent months at a time without playing with any other child. Young people have had their junior cert cancelled, and while that might have been a cause of celebration, certainly for me in my day, that rite of passage was missed, and the maturity of the experience of the exam is now a confidence deficit that must be addressed. In the initial days of the lockdown, youth work programmes were cancelled as the country got to grips with what it meant to be in a pandemic. Youth work staff, I believe, have not received the absolute credit they deserve for all that they did in the last year. In projects like the St John Bosco Youth Work Programme in my own home constituency of Dublin South Central, they immediately pivoted from engaging with what is the largest participant numbers to having to go to zero face-to-face contact and to an interaction that was only online or by video and phone contact. And they published a document which is just fantastic of the 9 months of last year and all that they did and achieved with young people during that time. They created and developed programmes for online, they distributed art packs, they did anti-racism initiatives, held an online cafe, a video blog chat called Bosco Inspires that involved interviewing various guests relevant to young people. And when the lockdown eased, they painted murals depicting the country's frontline services. They painted We Are Drimna as a representation of the community of Drimna and what aspects were relevant to them. The same creativity of engagement was demonstrated across an awful lot of organisations that engage youth, organisations like the GAA and the Irish Girl Guides also, that got involved in an extraordinary level of volunteerism, making their community better places. Minister, one of your strategic goals is to help those who are vulnerable, including children, young people and at-risk individuals, to overcome adverse circumstances and to achieve their full potential. Last year's budget for your department was an unprecedented investment, and I'm calling on you to ensure that that's maintained this year and if possible, increased. As for the school leavers of the past year, they travelled an emotional roller coaster with their leaving cert. They missed their debs and their holidays. They weren't able to travel abroad to work. And for those who did get into college, the first year of college was nothing of the uplifting, liberating experience it should have been. I acknowledge that also a huge amount of investment has gone into ameliorating the awfulness of last year for them. And I set that out in the wording of the motion, and that it continues. Recent figures show that when the PUP is excluded, youth unemployment is up 4% from the pre-COVID seasonally adjusted average of 11% to 15%. And I appreciate that moves to address this are already in place or are shortly to be announced, and that your own department has been involved in that. The expanded capacities of the Intrio centres, that we now have an extra 100 job coaches, that there has been an increase in the Jobs Plus subsidy to employers to hire young people, and that an employer can get $7,500 if they employ a young person who has been unemployed for more than 4 months. So employers are incentivised to employ young people, and I really appreciate the apprenticeship schemes, the back to education, back to work allowances, and the soon to be finalised pathways to work 21 to 25, shortly to be published by the Department of Social Protection. These are all reflecting a whole of government strategy which will build on the support measures already in existence to assist young people in their journey to work. Other things would help young people, addressing the sudden rise in insurance for international students, for instance, ensuring quick pathways to driving tests for young people anxious to get on the roads themselves, hastening all of the initiatives that government has planned. Minister, I've asked you to create a pathway to engage with young people. I believe this needs to be an interdepartmental, so the response can be assured across all government departments. We need to establish a youth collaborative forum, as you do so effectively in so many other areas of your department, and to hear the unique challenges of young people, enable them to suggest, request and influence government's output in accordance with all that is ambitiously set out in the programme for government and by your own department. Thank you.